Going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Steelers Breakdown Podcast. Nick Farabaugh here with you guys. The Steelers OTAs week is wrapped up. I was gonna talk about my OTAs takeaways today, and I'll touch on a few of them maybe, but we'll talk about that more in depth today. Let's talk about the news that dropped essentially after practice today, which was Jonnu Smith. The Steelers are talking with the Miami Dolphins about their Pro Bowl tight end. He wants a new deal. His preference is to rework that deal and stay with the Dolphins. However, they have had trade discussions. Obviously, folks, no question about this. That the Steelers need offensive talent. They need weapons. Um, but it being another tight end is the surprising part of this. And there's the obvious connections with Jonnu Smith and Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith coached him for 4 years in Tennessee, then another year in Atlanta, basically using him as a screen, almost gadget player type in Atlanta. He was highly used each time in those offenses. Basically, each year he increased his targets, his yards, his usage in general. So Arthur Smith loves Jonnu Smith, and it's not a surprise that they would be in on it if he wants to be traded. But Jonnu Smith wants a new contract. How much would it cost to trade for him, and how much would the contract cost? And we're talking about a guy that will turn 30 in August. He's 29 right now. And we're talking about a tight end that's coming off the best season of his career. Um, Set career highs in receptions, touchdowns, and receiving yards, also franchise records for the Dolphins in all three of those marks. So this is a guy that was a Pro Bowler last year, extremely talented and a good player. I don't really think um, there's much of a question about that. I think the question kind of comes down to where does Pittsburgh slot him in at? Jonnu Smith is not a traditional tight end. In like any way, you look at how Miami used him. A lot of screens, a lot of yak opportunities. The Steelers don't really have someone that is a natural yak monster. DK Metcalf can do catch and run stuff on, the slants and when he gets in the open field, but he's not a natural yak monster like Jonnu Smith. And so that's interesting. It adds something they don't have. They can split him out a lot, play him as an F. They can do 13 personnel with him, Washington, and Freiermuth. I don't think this trade has much to do with what they think of Freiermuth or Washington. And I think a lot of it has to do with how much Arthur Smith just loves Jonnu Smith. I think that actually is pretty accurate. When you're asking me why would they make this move, it's because he loves Jonnu Smith, and that gadget yak type of player is an interesting foil to this offense. They're going to be probably a heavy screen team no matter what. Aaron Rodgers, if he does sign, loves these types of tight ends. You think about the types of players he's played with before. Smith and Freiermuth fit that mold pretty well, to be quite honest with you. And so the Steelers adding Smith, I think, makes sense from adding talent. But I am worried they didn't maximize their tight end usage last year. There was a lot of open plays with Pat Freiermuth where he didn't get the football. He wasn't kind of heavily featured enough. He had a fine season statistically, but I wish he was more they had more focus on him and maximized his potential. I don't think that it showcased that. And so I don't think could you make the criticism here of the trade because the Steelers don't need another tight end? Potentially. But I actually almost am more worried about the usage of it. I think if they could maximize the skill sets, I'd be all for it. They need more talent here. They need more pass catching talent. Jonnu Smith is a good player. There's no question about it. He has been good for about a half a decade now. And so the fact that he has kind of come out on the market now is an interesting proposition for the Steelers just because they need more. I think it's fair, though, any Steelers fan that's asking themselves, can we maximize both Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith? Because I don't buy into the subscription that Pat Freiermuth isn't a good player. He was open a lot last year. He's savvy in his routes. He's got great hands. He might not be an elite blocker, neither is Jonnu Smith, but the Steelers have an elite blocking tight end in Darnell Washington. So if you can find ways to use them and utilize them and maximize this skill set, I'm for it. But they need another receiver. They really do. And Jonnu Smith doesn't fix that completely, even though you can try and use him as that F type. And so it's an interesting kind of conundrum to me. I like the player. I like what he adds because the Steelers don't have it, but I am worried and I have concerns that they won't be able to maximize him and Pat Freiermuth in this offense. Smith and Freiermuth is a great tight end duo. There's no question. But it's about, can the Steelers tailor the offense to those guys and can they maximize them? Because they were a terrible screen team last year. They were awful in 13 personnel. Could they supercharge those this year and find more easy yards as a result of that? That's really where you're looking at. And 13 personnel with Smith and Freiermuth is a really weird grouping because it's actually less about the gaps you're creating, the blocking, and more about the receiving prowess. And so I don't think this hurts Darnell Washington that much in terms of his snaps. And the reason I say that is because I think Darnell Washington is kind of snap proof. He's a great blocker, and that's going to be needed in this offense no matter what. The run game is going to heavily rely on his skill set. But Jonnu Smith is a odd skill set from a good player. We're just like, how do the pieces fit together? And the Steelers need a clear vision on that before they give up any draft capital and paying a contract to a guy that is entering his 30s. It is adding talent to a room, but it's also going to be like, how do you kind of fit all the pieces together? And I think that is a realistic concern. So we'll see. If this happens, it happens. And I think the biggest question is going to be how they maximize these guys more than anything. And so, I wouldn't deter me still from adding a wide receiver. I think you need a wide receiver still. If this was when we were talking about wide receiver three, I think you can make that argument that, Smith could be that, but not as a wide receiver two. Even in Arthur Smith's offense, even for an offense that doesn't highly feature a wide receiver two as much as others, it still matters a lot. And so the Steelers adding Smith is just an interesting loop in all this, and you got to make sure you are able to fit those pieces together. There needs to be a coherent, clear vision. Otherwise, you're going to have talent that's going to go to waste. And I think that's the big concern I have here if you make this move. So I like Jonnu Smith. It's just, is this a smart allocation of resources? And do you have a vision to maximize it? Because if you have a vision, you think it's going to work, go for it. But if you don't, I think that's where you say, is the cost benefit analysis of this worth it? So we'll see. Jonnu Smith trade talks hot and heavy, and we will see kind of if the Steelers can end up landing him or not. Let's talk a little bit about OTAs. The Steelers were at the UPMC Arena Sports Complex today, and they heavily focused yesterday on ball security. Today, a lot of communication, focusing on that. Brandon Eccles said that they've been kind of learning each other's body language, learning each other's cues. It's been a big focus for them. No surprise after last season and the end of it. The Steelers went into this saying, we are going to fix that. And well, it certainly seems like they are doing just that, or at least attempting to do that. So the Steelers certainly are focusing a lot on communication, even offensively and along the offensive line. All of it fits into a puzzle piece. And let's talk about three players that I thought stood out in a way. One player you're probably not going to recognize, but I want to shout out is Max Hurleman. This was a guy signed as a UDFA after a rookie minicamp tryout. But he does a little bit of everything. He was with the running backs during rookie minicamp this week, he's been with the wide receivers. He's made a lot of tough catches. Says he actually idolizes Julian Edelman. Guys, this guy's quick. He's fast. He's an athlete. He can return kicks and punts. He can play coverage units. He's a little bit all over the place, and he's made some really tough catches. And I think that deserves commending. So this is a guy that no idea who he was before rookie minicamp. He was a walk-on at Notre Dame last year, and kind of grounded his way to that contract. He's had a nice few weeks here. And so these 3 days have been pretty solid for Max Hurlman. Just gotta pop on your radar there. That wasn't even close to mine. So wanted to kind of give you guys that inside scoop on that. Two, Roman Wilson. I mean, Roman Wilson looks really solid through 3 days. He does. It's an encouraging start. I'm not going to say that he is obviously going to be the wide receiver two or the wide receiver three, but I'll say this. He's healthy. He looks explosive and he looks extremely fluid on his routes. There was one play today, he ran an out route, just absolutely took Beanie Bishop's soul, like broke his ankles type of soul. Um, and so I think that is something fairly interesting that Roman Wilson has had a really good start to camp. Now, we will see how he continues through OTAs, mini camp, and then training camp, and then the preseason, and then the regular season. All those things need to be checked box. But at the very least, he's off to the right start. I think that's a good thing. And three, I wanted to shout Cole Holcomb. Coming back from that knee injury, man, he's moving well. He looks good. Coming back from that knee injury, I think you really could be worried about Cole Holcomb and say, does he have anything left? And I think there's some juice left there. There's a lot of physicality. He has bulked up since the injury. Like, he had all last year, obviously, to work out, and he has bulked up, especially in his upper half. He is like taking his punishment out on guys holding bags and dummies and sleds. There's a physicality, there's an edge to him, like something he wants to prove. He wants to get back on the field. So credit to Cole Holcomb, but I think he could potentially be a legitimately decent player for them as a rotational piece. So yeah, all signs are up for Cole Holcomb. So those are three players I wanted to highlight. Tomorrow I want to kind of dive into more of just overall the week, what I observed and bigger things, but I wanted to shout out some players today and just mention those two things that I noticed the Steelers were working on today. All right, folks, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell for more. I'll be back tomorrow.